everyone, welcome back to The Word on the Street. As you know, my name is Chloe and I'm here with Lizzie and Sue/Ansu. So I might actually end up calling her Ansu during this episode, but that's because within the African culture, everyone is uncle and everyone is auntie. So yes. So our topic today is going to be on women and abuse. And this is such a very sensitive topic based on a lot of things that have been happening in the world today and also for women's rights. So as we move on, I just want to ask you guys a question. What is abuse? Like, what does abuse look like? What is abuse to you?
Oh, I honestly can say I'm not too sure how I can summarize it in a few words. Like, I know the different types of abuse, but I guess the mistreatment of someone. I guess if I could do it in as simplest words as possible.
Yeah, so the mistreatment of someone, what do you think, Ansu?
That's exactly what it is. When somebody has, their rights have been taken away from them, things that are being done to them are things that leave them helpless. They cannot do anything without maybe somebody's permission, physically, indebted to somebody. They are just... It's such a broad topic, actually. So to define abuse in that, in a few sentences, I kind of think it belittles what it is because it's so broad. And because the other thing, sometimes what is abuse to one person can be totally different to another. But what we do know is that abuse is something which is done wrongfully against somebody, against their will.
Yeah, exactly. So based, according to Uncle Google, abuse is defined as any action that intentionally harms or injures another person, like you both said. So in short, someone who purposely harms another in any way is committing abuse. So basically that's what abuse in itself is. So as we're talking about abuse and women, and young girls, and looking at our culture today and looking at things that are happening in the world today, abuse is actually constantly increasing. So I'm going to read a couple of statistics out for you. I want to know whether these statistics shock you at all in a sort of way. Did you know them, or do they shock you at all, or do you agree with the statistics? So number one, it says here 1 in 3 women worldwide have experienced physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. That's 1 in 3. We are 3 people here. So 1 in 3 women have actually experienced some sort of like sexual, physical abuse. Like, does that shock you?
So for me, that would be shocking, actually. Whilst the statistics are there, and they probably are true, based on some research or something, they would be true. But because there's 3 women here, I start to look at myself, and then I turn to Lizzie and yourself, and I'm thinking, if we really went deep, which one of us has experienced the abuse? And that on itself is a scary layer that most times we do not want to unpack. And a lot of us don't really actually think about it, do we? You don't ever think like, oh, the person I'm seated next to or standing next to could have experienced some form of abuse. We don't really think about it, do we?
Yeah, I know Women's Day that happened last month or 2 months ago now. When the statistic came out that 97% of women have experienced sexual harassment or been sexual harassed, I was like, whoa, that's really high.
It's such a high number.
I did a little experiment of myself. So I messaged a couple of my female friends to say, hey guys, have you experienced being sexually harassed? And one of my friends did say, I asked 2. So one of my friends did say that it wasn't to like a large extent, but I've been catcalled, I've been approached differently. There has been times when, yes, I would say I've been sexually harassed. I'm like, oh, wow.
I think it's also quite common, especially on the streets. Like, I remember I was in London working. I was minding my business, walking back home, tired, and all I hear is somebody whistling and saying, my size, my size. And I'm like, on the streets, I don't know who this person is. And I'm thinking, like, you cannot just come and approach me like that. That's quite disrespectful. Like, I would never go to a guy and approach them and saying, my size, my size. But you find like these things are so common in society that even we just sort of accept them. Oh, that's how people speak now. But then when you think about it deeply, you're like, that actually should not really happen. You cannot approach someone like that. So when you do
look at the statistics, and they're saying 1 in 3, and the 3 of us sitting here, in one way or another, we've we've encountered, experienced. It doesn't matter how deep or how shallow, but at some point we have. When I look at my life, probably in the workplace area, I've probably faced a lot in my work area, in my workspace, you know. But when I look at, then if I step out of the work area and go just out in general in the community, in society, even worse. So so it doesn't matter how little or how small. Sometimes it's just having that awareness or that knowledge as a woman. Are you empowered enough to be able to tell that this is happening?
This is happening to you. That is so
or
true.
that this is what it is.
So statistic number 2. Globally, as many as 38% of murders of women are committed by a male partner.
I'm not surprised. Personally, it's only because I've constantly been told it's most murders. It's not by someone you don't know. It's by someone you do know, someone closest to you. So it's a shame. It's terrible that it's so high. But
I was kind of shocked by this. I mean, I've heard stories of, you know, there's one story I heard that this man, actually, I read it. This man was cheating on his wife. And he wanted to get away with cheating, and what does he do? He literally murders his wife and his 2 children and dumps them somewhere. And literally, I read that story, I was thinking, like, this is not real life. There's no way this is actually real life. And you read the stories and you think that this has got to be from like some movie or something. But this is a true story. One man wanted to get away with what he was doing, so instead he harmed his own family. And to me, I'm like, these are people you chose to love. They didn't ask you to love them. You know what I mean? You chose to do that. Then for that love to turn into something so horrific to the point that you are willing to get your hands dirty to actually kill your own family, your family members, for me that is like extremely shocking. It's a bit. I
think perhaps it's not shocking, you know, because for me I think it's just the decay of society. But the sad part about it really is that from a place of love comes such an ugly dark cloud, you know. It's from a place of safety, a place of protection, because if you think of their partner, whether they are married to them or they're just their partner, they are saying, I'm going to protect you, you know, I'm going to keep you safe. When you're with me, you're safe. And ultimately, this is the end of you. So that's just the decay of society. You know, that moral fiber that anything can trigger somebody, you know, to that. And there are so many examples that we can all pull from the stories that we've had, from maybe experience, first-hand experience, from even the media. We read and we see these stories, and it's
quite shocking.
And it is, because it's a place of love. It's coming from a place of, this is my person, this is someone I cherish.
And you put your trust in that person as well, only to be betrayed like that. Okay, statistic number 3. As many as 150 million girls worldwide are raped or subject to sexual violence each year, usually by someone in their family circle.
I you know, with things such as female genital mutilation, that's seen as a cultural thing. Or I know in some societies, if you rape a virgin child, then you'll not be sick anymore and have those kind of things. It's again, it's not, because of my prior knowledge, I'm not surprised that the number is so high, but it's just still so disappointing that it's still so high.
I'm just actually asking myself, why am I sitting here? Like, how did I agree to such an ugly topic? Like, it's making me sad. You know? Because I think the stats are there. We don't want to go deep and look at them and what they mean, because they are so close, you know, close to home. Because unknowingly and whatever we've been exposed to, we've got to admit that somebody in our circle has been going through this, and that's what's really sad about it. That it questions the type of relationships we have with each other. You know, how well do we know each other? You know, are these things that we talk about as a society? And sadly enough, these things happen, but we don't have the safe spaces, you know, to talk about them. We don't actually sit down, you know, even as women. I know we have got programs, especially now. I really do think that things like women's ministry, they are getting even better, you know, because we are getting the spaces to talk to each other, talk to the younger women, educate one another, and so on. You know, we are kind of trying to empower each other, but also to be aware of each other, that as a sister, how can I be supportive? As an auntie, am I a safe person that, you know, this young person can come to me and say, I'm going through this, you know, and that's where we should be moving. That's the direction we should be moving. So when I hear the, you know, the stats being, you know, it terrifies me. In fact, I'm even like getting just cold shivers that the truth of the matter is that people around us could be going through stuff. But do we know? Do we talk about it?
Because this
care enough?
This one statistic as well, I was sort of like shocked by it, and I'm going back like to the fact that you growing up as a young girl, your home is supposed to be a safe space. And to know that a lot of young girls out there have been sexually abused by a family member, and they can't even say anything because that is a family member. You know what I mean? And the type of threats you would receive from that, you know, from that particular family member to, you know, to push you not to even say a single word to your own family, to your own parents. You know, it's interesting that a lot of these things do happen, but people don't really speak about them. And you don't have, like, even especially in the home, I think a home should be a place whereby I can come to you and say this and this is happening, and I expect my parents to understand or my aunties to understand. That's not what happens all the time. It's always like, oh, she's just a child, she's just saying this, or look at her, you know what I mean? Everything just brushed down and you look like an idiot when you're actually screaming out for help. But instead you're treated like, you know, like you're just a loud mouth. And it's such a shame.
I think it's the way society is designed. You know, when we go to patriarchy and look at, you know, who is speaking for the women out there? Is it women or is it the men voices? And what are they saying? How do they define, you know, abuse, or how do they define, you know, something being done wrong? And a lot of it, like you're saying, stems from the home, a place of safety. And sadly, when you were saying that, maybe not sadly as such, let me not cast something that is not there. I remember when I was a young mom, I worked, let's just say, from one city. My children were in one city and I was working in another city. And because my children were young, my eldest was probably 3 at that time. But in my in-laws' home, I just remember that there were so many males. You know, and she was just a kid, and I remember every time, that was my prayer every time. I saw her weekly, you know, but my prayer every time was like, I hope she doesn't become one of those children who at that young age experiences something
such trauma.
And you know, to be honest, she had such loving uncles, and you know, but as a woman I was aware that it was a fear. It probably was unfounded, you know, it didn't have, you know, base or foundation, but because it was there even in my mind thinking, could this happen? So it shows you that it is happening in our homes, in the safe spaces where we're supposed to flourish, you know. But sometimes when it does happen, the mothers, you mentioned the aunties, they don't believe their girl child when she comes with this. And that's what's heartbreaking, because if you're not going to believe your child, and for reasons such as, I want to protect my marriage, or it didn't happen, but it happened, and your child is coming to you. And so it's, what has society said? And that's why I said, whose voice is speaking on behalf of the women? You know, when we go to the, you know, how family is defined, the nuclear family, you know, if you grow up in the typical African family, the nuclear family, there's extended and extended. So when I say brothers, sometimes you've got uncles, sometimes you've got cousins, you know. Does anybody do a risk assessment? Does anybody check, like, this person, their background, are they safe to be in the space? Nobody does that. But it's because of what is termed to be family. So it's supposed to be a safe environment. So a lot of it just happened and it's just swept under the rug, under the cup. Nobody talks about it. And so you grow up with, you know, then you meet broken people, broken women, who have just gone through terrible, terrible things. And it's only because there's never been the space where you say, I can talk about this.
Yeah.
I can talk about this and still thrive.
Yeah.
You know?
But yeah, like as you mentioned there, like when you're talking about your experience with your child and that sort of like fear, it's not okay. You should not have that sort of fear when you leave your child somewhere, especially like in a home,
trusted environment.
Yeah, in a trusted environment, to actually have that fear that, oh, what if somebody touches her? What if, you know, something happens to her? That already you're just going to be stressed the whole day. You can't even like concentrate on what you're doing because you are so worried, and I don't think that is okay. Okay, so statistic number 4, domestic violence is a global problem that affects 35% of women worldwide. Yeah, this did not shock me as much.
With the statistics that you've been reading, there's definitely,
This one I was like, this is something I would pretty much be like, yeah, I'm sure that is definitely something that happens. When I read this statistic, I was like, with a lot of stories I've heard from people, I'm like, yes, domestic violence is such a big thing that actually needs to be dealt with. But yeah, what do you think, Ansu?
I suppose I'm thinking because of my background or my current position working in social work in that field, it's just such a minefield. Domestic abuse no longer looks the same. You know, so nowadays we're leaning more on gender-based violence. You know, if you look at how society around us is evolving, you've got the transgender society, for instance, where you're getting a lot of statistics from that transgender society. So you end up not knowing whether this is a man or it's a woman, if you get my point. You know, but then also you get that there's so much males facing domestic abuse in their homes. But again, society detects or says, men, you're stronger, you've got muscles.
Yeah, you should know.
So how can you come here crying that, you know, that's again societal. So it's underreported. And so the stats will show that women are being abused. And your stats will not show that there's
violence
against
males.
And yet a lot of males are also facing the same thing.
Because
so
it's not being reported, so they will not necessarily write down the right statistics as well. Like, that's true. Like, and obviously, like, it's going on a small tangent like, from the topic itself. But I think, based on what you're saying, like, men should be tougher. Like, you know, you should. What do you mean that you got abused by a woman in the first place? Like, already, even in terms of pride, or they are less likely to go and actually speak of it. And also the fact that what if my friends find out that I went through this? How would they react? You know, it's that whole thing of validation from people as well that you need.
So if you throw it even on the other hand, most women will not report it. For the very same reasons that you just quoted. What will my family say? What will my friends say? You know, women in top positions, who wants to look weak? You know, when you're chairing the board, when you're sitting on an executive seat, you know. So women are lucky because nowadays, you know, especially with makeup and all of that, they've learned the art of hiding behind makeup, you know. So they sit there, they've got powerful positions, but can they actually say that this is happening? They will deny it. Yes. So the stats are there. But in all truth and fairness, because it's such an ugly topic, nobody really wants to say, I'm abused. To say it as I'm a victim. So nobody wants to be, the minute I say I'm a victim,
you become so timid and everybody's like treating you like an egg.
It's a different word altogether. So you find that whether it's male, whether it's female, it's underreported. Very much.
Yeah, definitely. Statistic number 5. Globally, around 137 women are killed by their partner or a family member every day. 137 women globally are killed by their partner or family member every single day. I had nothing to say to this. I was just, when I read this, I just sort of like, I was like, what? Now this one shocked me a little bit. This one's a bit of a shock.
There's not a lot of words you can say towards that. It's like what we've been seeing. You know, your home is supposed to be your safe space. And for a lot of people, women and male, but since it's women and abuse, for a lot of women and young girls, it is not a safe space. It's where you should be protected from all the dangers of this world. There's so many things killing us right now, and just it's so upsetting to think that even in your house where you think at least I'm safe there's a lot of people that don't have that comfort.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit of
I also find myself short of words.
Yeah,
because yes, it is supposed to be a safe space, but then we start to bring in the other layers. What is the environment saying? What is happening? So you find probably the reasons why it's no longer a safe place. You've got probably unemployment, you've got addiction, you've got COVID. Yes, can I say, because I'm in social work, that the increase of crisis in families just rose over this whole period of COVID, that we have intervened in so many places, in so many situations, but there is an awareness that during a time of crisis, and this type of crisis, which has just left people closed indoors with no outlets, with no safe space. So previously, if you felt some type of emotion, you probably could go out, meet a friend, talk about it. But with COVID, you are just in this space with all that frustration or anxiety or whatever is happening. And unfortunately, like you're saying, stats are sometimes horrible.
Like when I read
that is the reality.
Yes, when I read that statistic, I was quite shocked by it. But so still on the topic of abuse, I mean, there's like different types of abuse that happen. So we've sort of like talked about a bit of sexual abuse within the statistics themselves, and domestic violence. What other types of abuse do you think are there?
I know one that, not used to be, but now we're bringing more to light these things. But psychological, emotional abuse, that's been something that's not being considered as much in the past, but I think now it's becoming more come to light. And I think psychological, emotional abuse would be one as well.
I think for women, that's the probably number one, because just by the words, it's supposed to be tied with your emotions. It's supposed to be personal. How do you define that? How do you unpack it? And yet a lot of somebody who is controlling or manipulative, narcissistic in tendencies, or toxic in whatever they're doing, they will bring your self-esteem, your confidence, everything, your performance in life is through that psychological abuse, which is, I think, a huge one, because then it impacts, because it starts off mainly with my experience and what I've observed. It starts off as psychological, and then it moves up a notch. It becomes physical. Because if this woman is strong enough to withstand the psychological, then how else can I disempower them? I'm going to use those muscles that I was talking about. I'm a man, I'm stronger than you. I'm going to use those. So it becomes physical. And sometimes physical is not enough. It might be a partner coming back and saying, oh, I'm sorry, honey, I was really frustrated, comes with some chocolate and flowers, and it's never going to happen again.
They promise, oh, I won't do that again, I won't do that again, and then,
And that's how it develops. It develops to even probably to death, what we were talking about, But then when you look at other abuses that are there, we spoke of sexual abuse just slightly, that it does happen in families. There's the financial abuse that happens. Who controls the finances in the home? That sort of thing. Where's the money going? How are you spending it, and so on? Am I going to take your whole salary away from you? What am I going to do? Those are things that happen in the home.
And then just speaking on, I remember reading a story, and people were advised, this one lady was advising that as women, we need to stop having this thing of, okay, my husband will deal with the finances, and you're just like, just there, and you don't know what's happening with the money. And at the end of it, it's not necessarily saying that, okay, control everything, no. But you as a woman in the household, in the home, you need to actually also have some sort of like, you know, awareness of what's happening, or even just your income. You've worked hard, you know, this person does not own your income. Though even if you're one, they do not own you in that way. They don't own your income in that way. And I guess it's where both the families, you know, both the man and the woman, they are to understand that, okay, you're an individual, I'm an individual, and we work together towards something. It's like a union of two, not just one here and one there. And I think we'll speak more a bit of hierarchy a little bit later on in the home. And to see exactly why that is a thing that is now and how it affects with abuse. But some of the different types of abuse, some you've mentioned, majority of them really. So here I had sexual abuse, financial abuse, as you mentioned, psychological and emotional abuse, physical abuse, and discriminatory abuse. This one I found very interesting, and this one seems like it affected more the people that are, for instance, if you are with someone who is not a national in whatever country you're in. So for instance, we're in the UK. So this sort of abuse in sense is like discriminatory abuse. In a sense, you are not a British national, but I am a British national. So I, you know, in a sense, I am higher than you, that kind of thing. Or even in different countries whereby like I'm an African, like a Ugandan national, and you're not a Ugandan national, so I know more, you know, you have to behave this sort of way. So that, in that sense, and that can be manipulation in itself as well. So what do you guys think about like discriminatory abuse, and how could that actually play a part in how women or young girls can be treated in society?
I'm not sure. When, you know, initially when you said discriminatory abuse, I guess the first setting that I thought of was the workplace. I don't know if it's still, I don't know if that's that's what it actually aligns to, but I've never actually thought of discriminatory abuse, actually, funnily enough.
I suppose the viewers of this podcast probably range of people, different. And one thing that they're going to notice is that we are all black. So in the workplaces, wherever we speak, places of influence, it doesn't matter. What are you going to encounter in your everyday life? And what does British look like? You know, what does Uganda look like? Does that mean in Uganda there are no white people? You know, and it's people and their perceptions, and that's what, you know, entails everything. I know probably just in the last week, you know, Prince Philip died, and the news came up. I was at work, so I was doing some home visits, and when I entered that home, the breaking news had just, you know, gone in. You know, Prince Philip has died, and I was like, oh, that is so sad. I'm so sad for the Queen, you know. But it was almost like you're not entitled to feel that way, you know, because who are you? Do you understand? And those are the things that sometimes we brush them aside. But we brush them aside. We grow a tough skin where that even in the workplace, even when you're faced with so much discrimination, you have learned to deal with it in a different level. So we face it in different ways. And I say that because in this space that we're in just now, we probably have experienced one form or another. You know, some of it is subtle, very subtle and hidden, you know. And I could probably start, you know, singing, you know, the Queen's, the national anthem, and then also say, you know what, my country is a British colony, was. You know, I speak English because they came and colonized my country. Somebody will question, why should I mourn Prince Philip? What do I know? You know, that kind of thing. But if I go back to the history, that history will make them sad. You know, there are so many layers in whatever type of abuse there is. And I think by sharing on this platform, on this podcast, is a growing awareness that in our journeys, we don't know where each one of us is coming from. You know, so I might look this way, but do you know me? Have you taken time to sit with me, get to know my story? Maybe I can contribute something of value to your life. Maybe you can give me something back. You know, it's those spaces. So when you're talking about abuse, literally is taking power away from another person. Okay, no matter which abuse you're talking about, it's about, let me strip that power off you. So if I discriminate you, what am I taking away from you? Your power to speak, your voice. You know, I'm taking away maybe a little bit of your confidence, your self-esteem. I'm making you doubt how you look, doubt yourself, how you speak, how you present yourself.
Yeah.
So a lot of it, Lizzie is right. It's in the workplace.
Yeah.
It's outside. It's outside of the home, in the workspaces, places of influence, wherever you are given a platform.
Yeah.
That's where it takes place.
Yeah, that's true. Even just sort of like thinking about different, like being in work and comments that people say, and sometimes you just be like, oh, okay, whatever. You don't care too much about it, but when you look at it deeply and you go back home and you're like, hold up, that was not okay, you know? And sometimes you don't even react then. It's later on when you think about it and you're like, that was actually not okay for that person to say such and such a thing. But I think like people are so used, especially to speak their mind and say the first thing that comes to mind. At the end of the day, it's my opinion kind of thing. You know, I'm entitled to say what I see, which is true. Everyone is entitled to express themselves a certain way, but in your expression, it shouldn't be detrimental to the person, mentally, emotionally, or physically, in any sort of way. And looking at discriminatory abuse, and this, it goes for every single person, no matter the color, no matter the size, the age, you know, all these sort of things, like they do happen, like you said, in the workplace. Even sometimes in the home itself, you know, when you're walking out, when people meet you on the streets and things that people say, and you sort of like brush it off so quickly. So I think like this sort of like abuse sort of like does happen everywhere, and it is for us to sort of like to be aware of it as much as possible, and to see, you know, if somebody goes through that, how can I then be of help to them? Okay, so just to the next question I want to ask, why do you think that this abuse sort of like is increasing in within our society? Like, why is abuse increasing so much, especially against women? Because you would think, based from where we came from, with us, you know, women fighting for the right to vote, women fighting for certain rights, equal pay, you know, why do you think, you know, this is still going on for such a long time? With media even shedding more light on it, it just seems like it's just going more and more out of hand. It's like the more knowledge people have, the worse they become, which does not make sense. And this is obviously looking at media and the stories that are being covered in media. Just recently, was it in India that the first woman to drive or something like that? And I'm thinking, there was a certain country whereby
I can't remember which one. I don't know.
The first woman to drive a car, like, to have a license. I was like, wow. It was like in 2000 something. But yeah, like, knowledge is increasing. These things are coming to light. But yet, it just seems like, I don't know whether it's because media is covering it more, that it seems like there's so much of it now, or is the fact that based on how society is, people are just now prone to more violence, even just against, you know, their own family members. What do you think?
Oh, I don't know. It's
okay, so I'd like to sort of tune it in. Like, so let us look at social surroundings, right? What does society, our social surroundings actually, how do they play a part in the increase of violence? So you're looking at the where we get our influences from, like you mentioned, and so they're looking at how we are taught to treat one another. School, uni, you know, like how do our surroundings play a part in the increase of violence?
I mean, I guess, I forgot what I was about to say, but I guess as a basis, you know, those who benefit from such uneven or unequal power, they will not give it up so easily, first of all. So the benefactors of this, the way society is right now, they will not give up that position so easily, first of all. And also, secondly, you know, in terms of what Ansu was saying about, you know, the circumstances in our home that, I guess, will perpetuate, you know, abuse, you know, the disparity is just still there. There's still so many broken homes, and people coming from broken homes, and it just continues on the cycle, you know. So I know the wealth gap is, finances, you know, things can be very contentious in our relationship. So, you know, the wealth gap is still increasing, poverty is still increasing, you know. And these kind of factors kind of stress things.
People, yeah.
You know, these are stressors that occur. But yeah, so I don't know the exact answer to that question, why it's still increasing, but I guess it's because it'll be a number of different reasons and a number of different things. And I think even certain gender-based biases we are still taught as kids as well as young people. Like, we haven't gotten rid of all these gender-based biases, like the woman needs to be at home to cook and clean. I think that's still something that a lot of people still have that in their head. Like, it has to be the woman. It doesn't matter, you know, the different dynamics of the family or anything like that. It still has to be the woman.
You go work your 9 to 5, look after the kids, cook the meal.
Yes, I think men aren't allowed to cry. You know, there's still these certain societal assumptions that we still have that still that discredit women, and it benefits men.
It's almost
more.
like carried from one generation to another to another.
Yes.
It's almost like things that now it's almost like we need to break the generational curse, basically, like break those.
And it's very difficult. It's proven to be very difficult. Of course, we're improving. You know, way more women at work and all this kind of stuff, but there's still a lot of it going on.
Yeah. What do you think, Ansu, in terms of social surroundings playing a part in the increase of violence and abuse against women?
So, one of the things that you're saying was that there's so much progression in the world. And I just wanted to say that the more changes there are, the more remain the same. Do you know that? That on this earth there's nothing new. Nothing takes God by surprise. So even sin, you know, sin can become more educated and get a PhD, you know, but it's still sin. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the more progress there is, the more remains the same. Same structures, same whatever. But I think when you have a space where you can be a difference or make the change, you begin to be the change even in your own home. Or what your family you want it to look like, that's what you do. You role model all those things. So as much as you try that, it all begins in the family. You know, there's a scripture, and I know we're not yet maybe delving into the Bible that much, but if you go to charity, it begins at home. That's in Corinthians. So whatever begins at home is then what is manifested outside the home.
Yes.
Because if you think communities are made up of families, communities are made up of that family space that begins. That's what becomes society. So when we talk about all these violences or abuses, we're really saying that a lot of families, a lot of families are in a bad space. A lot of families have lost hope. A lot of families are broken. That's generally what we're saying, because that's where society is born. And sometimes it feels like it's sad because man is born of woman. Am I right?
Yes.
So we see little boys, young men, adults. Where did they start? What did they learn? What made them? You know? And you find in that nuclear family, or in that family, a lot of focus for mothers is probably the girl child. I need to teach my little girl to be a good wife. From the time you are a baby, and you're like, hang on, let her be a child, let her grow. Those messages resonate and grow with that little girl. Who teaches the boy to be a good husband? I don't see the dads doing that. Who invests in that time, for instance? And then, what is modeled in the home? What are we modeling?
That's so interesting they actually say that, because looking at growing up, I don't think they are, because a lot of parents take on, like, mothers teach your daughter to do A, B, C, D, and the guy they're playing, loving life, whereas you're like, you know, doing all the housework, being always forgiving and kind and all this, whereas the male child is just there, you know, they're just living life.
So wake up one day and be the priest of the home. How am I going to be a priest? Who taught me how to be a priest? Do you understand? But it's almost as if the girls should be taught how to manage a home, how to cook, how to clean,
how to overcome everything.
Yes.
You know?
But hang on. How about if we invest that same energy? Because guess what? Where we started from, right at creation story, when God created man, he made female, male and female made he. That's what the verse says. Equal.
Equal,
you know. So when you look at that, and then when you look at that, God put man in the garden first and gave him work to do. He was to till and plow and look after, he did husbandry, he looked after the animals. To get his food, he did some gardening. So when he had all that, he had a habitant. So God made a habitant for man, yes, and gave him management rights to create that and manage that before he brought the woman. When men recognize that, hang on here, I'm the only one without someone equal to me. All these animals, I can see them, they've got, you know, their pairs.
Or someone.
Yes, but the woman came in when there's a habitat, a man who's already got skills in husbandry, in looking after animals, in providing. Do you understand?
In caring, catering.
This was the manuscript and the way God intended it to be. So if the woman is coming here, says, I will make you a helpmate, someone equal to you, who will work by your side together to complement this whole union. Okay, but there's already what? A habitat, a home. All right. So now when you look at abuse and where it stems up from, because I try and think, that first fight probably that has taken place, what happened? The woman probably said, I'm hungry, there's no food, the babies are crying. And the man felt challenged because he didn't provide. And so when you are challenged, you tend to something else. So he used his power to say, oh, shut up, you woman, who do you think you are? To what? Cover up his failings. Do you understand?
Because of pride.
So a lot of the abuse that takes place is about disempowering another person, stripping them of a certain power. So now you're challenging my manhood. I've failed to provide. A lot of the places where abuse takes place is because somebody has questioned, why is this like this? And sometimes it's for the stories that we see, the stories we're exposed to, the stories that we read. For the smallest little thing, it's because somebody has felt dissatisfied, or maybe they go to work and somebody treated them nasty.
So they bring their anger home.
You know, so you come home and just say, hey, honey, how was your day? And they start beating you up. You know, but they've been probably frustrated at work. Somebody has removed their male ego and so on. There are so many layers into abuse. But when you look at it, sometimes it's because the roles, this provider, this habitant, this husbandryman, this man who knows these skills is no longer doing those things. So woman is now getting afraid, I shouldn't ask. And more women in this generation are being very self-sufficient and independent because they say, hang on, I don't have to wait around. I can do this on my own. You know, and then you find men are now like, these women are too independent, these women are too strong. So there's no balance, there's no right, like, okay, so what do you want? You know? And that's what's happening in society.
I guess these are conversations that are to be had with people. But I like also what you said in terms of, like, you know, society is built in a home. And also reminds me of the scripture, you know, teach a child in which way they should go, so when they grow up they will not depart from it. And I think family has a massive part to play in that, and also how young girls are treated in their homes is very important, and that level of empowerment is needed from young girls. Also teaching them how to safeguard themselves and to speak out when they see something that is not right, and not to like quiet their voices. So I guess that's something that sort of teaching young girls just to cater for the home. Also teach girls how to, you know, cater for themselves, how to stand up for themselves, how to have a voice for themselves. And even if majority of people are against them, they can stand up and say, no, this is it, this is what happened, this is what I believe in, and this is what it is. And I guess it's like constantly, like you said, you know, changing these social standards of what a woman should be, or what a girl should be in a home, how they should speak, how they should react to situations, because a lot of girls are being taught to silence themselves when they see certain things happening or certain things going on. So like just even before we sort of like finish off, one other thing we're talking about is hierarchy. You mentioned it a little bit.
Yeah.
And the fact that hierarchy has a massive part to play. Now, hierarchy looks different to different people in different societies, in different homes. So take it from like an African background. You know, a man is here, just genuinely, as a man, you're the husband of the house, you're here. The female, the wife is just kind of like down there. You're just not doing whatever it is you're doing, you know, just in the background, but the man is the man of the home, you know, they were like, yeah, it's the guy. And whereas in other societies, it's not necessarily like that. So when you look at, in a sense, feminism and what a woman should stand for, what a woman should be, certain things that we may call abuse in the country we are in now, in the UK, for instance, other people will not consider them as abuse, right? So looking at like in sense of hierarchy in a home in Africa, like I can easily point out certain things that are wrong, like, and having been born, like, not being born in Uganda, but like grown up here, there's certain things I will not stand for when I go back. And even if like certain people, even aunties, when they say certain things, I'm like, no, I'm not doing that, because I've learned how to say no when I want to say no, or yes when I want to say yes, and stand up for certain things that I want to stand up for. And in terms of looking at a home, now you're looking at different societies, different people behaving differently in their homes, and looking at that level of hierarchy, and how does that level of hierarchy in a home affect the levels of violence and abuse in a house. Because I was reading certain statistics, and a lot of abuse actually happens in African nations, you know, Asian family homes, African family homes, you know, abuse happens there, but it's never mentioned, and that is, it's okay. It's almost seen like, well, he's the husband of the house, you clearly did something wrong, because he would not have acted like that if you were doing your job and doing it well in the house. So like, what's your take on that?
I guess
we are not married, so but we're different. Speaking as daughters.
You know, what I wanted to say about hierarchy, it's the whole aspect of you know, historically men have had ownership over women. It's that sense of entitlement. This comes even with sexual abuse or sexual harassment, where you know, women, their bodies are over sexualized, and men then feel they're entitled to that, to that woman or whatever it is. So it's that whole aspect in terms of hierarchy that is it's not only hierarchy, but it's the aspect that, you know, some men, hopefully lesser and lesser so, think that they have ownership over women or in the women in their lives. And so it's that whole aspect of, you're my property, so I can do with you as I please, kind of thing. So in terms of hierarchy, I think that sense of entitlement and ownership is present there and very dangerous.
I'm not sure how to even unpack that one, because you mentioned quite a few things when you talked about hierarchy. You talked about feminism, you know, women's rights and so on, where those movements stem up from. And you'll find that at the bottom of it, all they're saying is treat us equally. At the bottom of it.
So that's we're not against you, we just want you to treat us.
At the bottom of it, that's all that they're asking for. Hierarchy, maybe, I don't know. You know, there are certain questions that you'll never be able to have answers for, you know, as long as you're on this side of heaven, you know. Where it stems up from, how society, but most of our societies are patriarchal. Meaning that men are the voices, you know, and yes, rightly so, they're supposed to be the priests. They're supposed to be the protectors. You know, if you think about how Eve was created, for instance, you know, when God created Adam, he already had the mind and the picture of Eve. This is why she came from the rib. If you think about the positioning of the rib, is that the man's arm protects the rib. If somebody is punching you, this is why people protect their ribs. So if you think of woman, that she came from the rib, she's supposed to be protected. That's exactly what it's supposed to be. You know, and I think about a few places like the woman caught in adultery. I think of this woman who with an alabaster box. Who, you know, I think of there are certain women who jump at me, who come up, and where Jesus was just trying to speak out against these hierarchy things, do away with all these things, and just treat the woman with love and care. and respect.
And acceptance, I think that's the other issue in terms of accepting.
And that's what it's still about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm your equal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to fight for your position in the first place. And when women speak out, it's because the men are not doing their role. They're not doing their part. So when that is being challenged, the only pushback that men can use is usually power, their physical strength, their physical power. And because in board meetings nowadays, you know, you find it's a lot of suits, a lot of men.
Suit and tie.
And you will find very less seats for women. That's how society is designed. You look at parliament, look at who is sitting in parliament. You look at who are the decision makers. You see, this is why I think earlier on I said, who's speaking for the women? You find that even in fighting for women in parliament, it's the men who are
making those
they're the frontline people,
but
they have no experience of what a woman is or how to be a woman. Do you understand? It's how society has been designed, and because these things are there, hierarchy in the home plays a part. But you know what? It's beautiful when it works well.
Yeah.
When it works the way God designed it. When you see a loving husband and a loving father, and an equally respective mom and wife, because the commandment to husband is to love their wives, and the one to women is to respect their husbands. Now when you start by just giving that respect to your husband, guess what? All the love that you ever ask for in the world will flow down to you, because men just want to be respected. Feminism talk changes and has many dimensions, but at the core of it is about let's be equal, let's treat each other fairly. Okay?
Respect,
So let's not lean on no, I'm not going to be submissive or whatever. No, that's not what the commandment is really. When you respect, you get this flow. When homes work the way God intended, it's such a beautiful place to be. And when we start to model these things for our children, guess what? When they go out there and make the society, we'll have better societies. We'll have stronger men who don't feel,
threatened by a woman being more powerful than they are.
This is what you will have out there. You've got strong people. It all starts in the home. So we probably have to work harder in our homes and model better things. And because you're young and you're probably going to get into marriage one of these days, that's a task and a challenge for you. What do you want your home to look like? What do you want your home to look like? And what you want to see in your home, ultimately, we'll begin to see it outside, being played outside in society, isn't it? And that's what we're really talking about here in this space, that abuse is ugly. Abuse strips people of who they are. But because we are Christian women here, we have different experiences. But guess what? We have a lot to contribute to society as women. As women. Educated, beautiful, fierce, you name it. We have so much to contribute to society. And all we ask or say to the world is that, look at us as such. Give us that space. Let women flourish. Let the men be supportive. Just as wives are supportive to their husbands. It's not a competition.
It's not,
so that space should be a safe space for everyone around.
And I really love your conclusion on that idea of hierarchy. I like what you said. It works. It's a good thing when it works well. And when it does work well, there is happiness, and there is we have societies that are built with people who have respect and love for one another. And just to finish off, I wanted to read this quote from a book called Adventist Home. And it says here, "Neither husband nor wife is to make a plea for rulership. The Lord has laid down the principle that is to guide in this matter. The husband is to cherish his wife as Christ cherishes the church, and the wife is to respect and love her husband. Both are to cultivate the spirit of kindness, being determined never to grieve or injure the other. Do not try to compel each other to do as you wish. You cannot do this and retain each other's life. Manifestations of self will destroy the peace and happiness of the home. Let not your married life be one of contention. If you do, you will both be unhappy. But be kind in speech and gentle in action, giving up your own wishes. Watch well your words, for they have powerful influences for good or ill. Allow no sharpness to come in. And I think this sort of concludes it. And this is not only for the home per se, but individuals as women in our societies. We all have to understand that a level of respect needs to be there, but we should not demand rulership over the other person. I cannot come and demand, I'm the man of the home, respect me, or I carried these children for 9 months in the time. What did you do? You were just eating food, yeah. Like we can't do so. We cannot demand rulership, but rather when love is there, when respect is there, everything just sort of like flourishes, and it flows as easily as God intended it to be. I want to thank you both for joining me with this podcast, and such an interesting topic to talk about. Hopefully we'll have another chance to sort of like dig into it a bit deeper, and look at the different look at how God intends us to behave in society, and looking at the Bible and what does the Bible say, and what was the culture then, and what do we learn, what lessons will we learn from the Bible itself and the culture then. Thank you so much for joining. And thank you guys all for listening. Remember to like, share, comment, do everything there is to do on YouTube. Thank you for listening.